Well, let's look at landmark number 2, which is one that a lot of people know about, the Grand Canyon. Tell us about that.
Oh, the Grand Canyon is exciting. I have been there once, and I remember being awed and excited and terrified, in fact, because I was standing on the metal staircase going to the bottom, and the metal staircase started to rattle and shake, and I got awfully worried about all of that because the dimensions of the Grand Canyon are absolutely incredible. I've got a few figures here just to help understand all that, just to give you some idea. So the Grand Canyon is essentially roughly about 460 kilometres in length, or 290 miles in length. That's pretty big. That's impressive. Its depth varies from about 900 metres to 1,800 metres deep. And the canyon rim, by the way, is about 6.4 to 29 kilometres wide. Now, that's a significant piece of information. What does that mean? It means that somewhere in the order of 3,000 to over 4,000 cubic metres of sediment has been removed. Sorry, I will correct myself on that. Not cubic metres, 3,000 to over 4,000 cubic kilometres of sediment. Cubic kilometres of sediment.
Metres wouldn't be that much.
No, metres doesn't excite me.
Yeah.
But when I'm standing on the edge of a cliff face looking at, 4,000 or whatever it is, cubic kilometres of sediment that have been removed, it's inspiring.
That's huge. It's hard to even visualise a cubic kilometre. Like, imagine you walk out like a skyscraper that's a kilometre. I don't know if there is one that high. And then, wow, that's a lot. If you're enjoying this interview so far, you might be interested to know that we also produce the world's most widely read magazine on the creation-evolution debate, Creation Magazine. It's packed with beautifully illustrated articles showing how real science supports the Bible. It's designed for the whole family and is a great tool for strengthening your faith. Sign up now to receive 4 issues per year. Follow the link in the description. Yeah, how do geologists explain the formation of the Grand Canyon at the moment? Because I imagine that's a bit different to what you say. How do they explain it?
Well, essentially, if you look on the web or academic articles, what you're going to find is that long ages are going to be invoked or proposed. In other words, some will promote uniform materialism, that it's been a slow and regular process over years. Others might promote that there might have been a little bit of a catastrophe here and another one there and so on. But essentially, they are looking at long ages. That is the current idea. And so in other words, the current rivers created that with millions of years.
Right. And what are the problems with this idea?
I guess a good starting point is the Grand Canyon cuts through a number of plateaus rather than going around them. Now, that just doesn't seem logical. And again, when you read the academic literature, I'll give you a quote here from one academic scientist who was caught off guard by this. He said, oddly enough, the Grand Canyon is located in a place where it seemingly shouldn't be. In other words, why didn't the river that carved this Grand Canyon, why didn't it go around the plateaus rather than cutting through multiple plateaus?
Yeah, okay. So it's just to visualize this, it'd be like having, I don't know, like a mountain or a hill there today and a river, with water, let's say a lot of rain comes along and you get like a bit of a creek or a river flowing, and normally it would flow around the valleys around the outside, but the water just all of a sudden decides it's going to plow right through the middle of it instead.
Yes,
that doesn't make sense.
That's why we do call it a water gap as well, the Grand Canyon. It's a canyon, but it's also a water gap. And how that is created, it's not done by regular flowing waters. Flood waters will follow topography. But a catastrophic event doesn't follow topography. The turbulence and the velocity allow it to override the topography or the relief.
So it's the catastrophic event that you really need to explain that sort of feature.
Exactly.
So what other problems are there with the mainstream science understanding of the Grand Canyon and how it came to be?
Well, I guess when I stood there, your eyes focus on this incredible canyon. You look down, it's deep, it's sharp, it's brilliant. What you often don't realise, though, that's not just the only part of the canyon. There is a much larger broader canyon that sits higher up. In other words, there's a much wider canyon, shallower, but broad, incredibly big in size. And then you have the Grand Canyon cutting into that as well. So in other words, this canyon is massive. Now, you cannot create the larger one with the same flow that you create the smaller one. The larger canyon indicates a much significantly awesome flow that over time diminished, and then it cut down into a deeper canyon with lesser runoff.
Right. So how do you explain the formation of the upper canyon, the one that you can't explain with just normal flows we see today?
Well, I would argue that it was the concentration of the floodwaters as they came off the rising landscape. When water flows off a landscape, it starts first as a general flow, but as it begins to move, it begins to form, as you know, little rills and then gullies and then streams and so on. But if that water flowing off is massive, it will form gorges, massive gorges. But then as the water continues to decline in the volume, then it will start to form smaller gorges within the larger gorge. And so in the end then, you've left with a very minor river relative to the size of the double canyon, and doesn't explain, even in hundreds of millions of years, how that amount of land that we mentioned before, of all those cubic kilometres, thousands of cubic kilometres of sediment have been eroded.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit more about the gorge formation process? So you've got floodwaters, they're receding, and I imagine, is it a bit like a plateau to start with? And then you get gorges afterwards? What's the step-by-step process?
Yes, you're on the right track there, Michael. The plateaus are there. And you can see that when you look at the actual canyon itself. You will see the sedimentary strata. When you stand on the edge of the plateau, shaking and hanging onto a piece of metal, you will actually see the layers of the sediment that have been placed there as well. So you're seeing the depositional part of which created the plateau, and then you are seeing the incredible canyons as the runoff, as the plateau rose up out of the landscape, as it rose up, as the Lord raised it with his hands, the water rushes off and then begins to concentrate and form canyons, not just one, but many canyons. If you look at plateaus all around the world, in fact, you're going to see gorges coming off most of them.
Now, you mentioned creation.com before, which is a great place for people to learn about these landmarks and many other things. But there's also another resource that I'm aware of, which is Creation Magazine. So we have this, which comes out, I think it's 4 times a year, and it's just full of great articles. A lot of these articles written by scientists with qualifications. Can you tell us more about Creation Magazine and the things we could read in it?
Oh, absolutely. This is probably our most significant connecting to the community. It is a brilliant magazine. So this particular issue is the latest issue at this time of filming, and in 2024. And surprisingly, as we talk about landmarks and land features and so on, is that even in this, as you see there is an article on Devil's Tower, the one I mentioned earlier.
I remember that, yeah.
And so each issue will have something to do with earth science and geology. It'll have something to do with biology or ecosystems, something to do with astrophysics. A children's section will interview people who are just incredible Christians who believe in creation. The quality of it is astounding. And the little short articles, longer articles, all the rest. So there's a megalodon article as well. Now, you know that's going to attract a lot of attention from young people. They love these sorts of articles. And I love them, and I will highlight that they are written to the highest standards. And I know that as an academic. Why? Because I could publish anything I want in a top journal almost immediately. But my first article to the Creation Magazine had to be rewritten 4 times because it had to be exact. It had to be communicatable to the public, not to academics like myself. It had to be scripturally correct. And so I had to redo my first article with Creation Magazine 4 times. And I loved it because being able to connect with people, as this magazine does, is a powerful feature. And we have people within Creation Ministries, and my wife and I do the same thing. We will give this away to people who are seeking a connection to Christ. Creation is a big issue that is being discussed by young people today, seeking their identity, seeking their purpose, uncertain of why they're here. What is it they're asking? They're asking, why was I created? What is my purpose in life? This magazine is attractive to them. And so I recommend, if you are a member and you have purchased this magazine, first thing you do will be read it. Secondly, give it away. Give it away wherever you can. Even if it's in a hospital ward or a doctor's surgery, simply put it down, or a coffee shop, simply put it down. You'll be surprised how many people will come to us at Creation Ministries and say thank you. Fantastic.
If you want to get Creation Magazine, just check out the link below in the description and you'll be able to subscribe there. Thanks for joining us today, Ron. It was a pleasure to learn about landmarks and how they point to the global flood.
Thank you, Michael.